somebody says on your property, there's gold right here, drill right here. And you think, yeah, why not? Why not drill a hole right here? But then we can't just drill a hole wherever somebody thinks it is. So we have to do a little more diligence on this technology, and we intend to.
A $300 million treasure buried 100 feet underground, protected by engineered flood traps that have stopped explorers for over 200 years. This is the mystery of Oak Island. At its center lies the famous Money Pit, a deep shaft discovered in 1795. It's filled with strange layers of wood, coconut fiber, and carefully designed flood tunnels meant to prevent anyone from reaching the bottom. Over the years, explorers have uncovered bizarre clues: ancient coins, fragments of parchment, and even human bones dating back centuries. Some believe the island is connected to the Knights Templar, while others think it may hold pirate treasure, possibly from Captain Kidd himself. Now enter Vanessa Lucido, a professional engineer and CEO of ROC Equipment. Using advanced drilling technology, her team has reached depths that earlier treasure hunters could only imagine. They've recovered underground samples, including wood, metal traces, and unusual anomalies from deep beneath the swamp and Money Pit area. These findings have fueled new theories that something valuable may still be hidden below. Recently, speculation online has surged, with claims of a possible $300 million discovery linked to these excavations. But the real question remains: has the Oak Island mystery finally been solved? Or is this just another chapter in a centuries-old puzzle? In this video, we explore the real evidence, the latest discoveries, and whether this massive claim is fact, or just another myth. It all began with what seemed like an ordinary meeting. Nothing dramatic, just another strategy session. But something about it felt different. Rick Lagina, focused and serious, brought in Vanessa Lucido to discuss drilling plans for the Money Pit. The conversation revolved around technical decisions, whether to drill 7 or 10 feet wide, whether to go down 220 feet or even deeper. These were routine questions. What wasn't routine, however, was the timing. Just as the meeting ended, new evidence surfaced, evidence that would draw attention to a part of the island that had been overlooked for years. And what they were about to uncover went far beyond buried treasure. Unbeknownst to the team, they were stepping into one of Oak Island's most mysterious legends. Not just one hidden cache, but possibly 3, marked on a map that no one could confirm was real. The map showed symbols, X marks, squares, and carved stones. It sounded like a story out of a fairy tale, until the team began to find real-world evidence that matched it. The breakthrough came from a rediscovered map found in the personal papers of William B. Goodwin, a wealthy historian who had been fascinated by Oak Island since the 1930s. Goodwin had a known connection to Frederick Blair, one of the earliest Money Pit searchers. Although the original treasure map was lost, Goodwin's notes, sketches, and theories survived. And that was enough to spark a new search. Rick, Marty, Doug, and Terry began investigating areas known as Lots 1 and 21. This wasn't a vague or unclear drawing. It was a detailed, hand-marked diagram showing coordinates, landmarks, symbols, and paths. It pointed to 3 large boulders, each marking a possible treasure location. The first stone was marked with a carved X. The second had square-shaped carvings surrounding an X. The third appeared to have been split, possibly by lightning. At first, it all seemed speculative. Gary Drayton, equipped with his metal detector, didn't expect much. Many maps connected to Oak Island have led to dead ends, just debris, tangled roots, or disappointment. But everything changed when they found the first stone. It was a large, smooth slab with a clearly carved X, sharp, deliberate, and exactly where the map indicated. If this was coincidence, it was incredibly precise. The metal detector didn't pick up anything. No iron, no copper, no coins. But the team pressed on. Their next goal was the second marker. Before long, they found it. The square carvings had worn down over time, but they were still visible, and they matched Goodwin's description almost perfectly. 2 markers found. Still no treasure, but a clear pattern was emerging. Then came the next clue. The map didn't just identify stones, It included distances and directions. It instructed them to walk 91 feet inland, parallel to Center Road. There, they were supposed to find a uniquely shaped stone, one resembling a kidney. If this third marker existed, it would strongly suggest that the map was genuine. The team measured carefully, pushed through rough terrain, and eventually spotted it. A large, curved rock shaped just like a kidney bean. 3 markers. 3 exact matches to a map that many had doubted. Still, the metal detector remained silent. No treasure. But something more important had been confirmed. The map itself was accurate. And that changed everything. This was no longer just a search. It was a carefully designed puzzle. Just as momentum began to fade, Judy Rudebush read a final note from Goodwin's writings. "One last stone, split across the top, as if struck by lightning." Following the remaining clues, the team searched the area and found it. A massive boulder, cleanly split in half, with jagged edges and a hollow space beneath it. Gary stepped forward and scanned the area again with his metal detector. This time, it screamed. The signal was loud and unmistakable. The team rushed in. Beneath the stone, buried under layers of soil and time, they uncovered something solid, cold, and heavy. Iron. But this wasn't just a random nail or a piece of discarded equipment. It was an old cribbing spike, hand-forged, and based on its style, likely dating back to the 1700s, or even earlier. This wasn't junk. It had been placed there intentionally, and what Vanessa Lucido did next took the entire operation to another level, literally. The ground was no longer giving up its secrets quietly. Vanessa didn't need extra motivation to keep digging, but this discovery gave her plenty. That forged spike, found beneath the split boulder, clearly didn't belong there by chance. No one accidentally buries a heavy industrial spike under a carefully marked stone. This wasn't something left behind during construction. It was placed there on purpose. That realization made things more serious. Always thinking ahead, Vanessa called in her ground reinforcement team and prepared her ROC equipment crew for the next phase. This was no longer about theories. It was about proving that something had been deliberately hidden. Plans were set to drill deeper than ever, pushing past 200 feet into ground once believed to be untouched. But what if it had never been untouched at all? Marty Lagina pushed for faster progress, more data, smaller drill casings, quicker adjustments. Vanessa agreed. Using 7 to 8 inch casings would allow them to move faster, adapt as needed, and isolate any promising target zones. The island had offered clues for years. Now, they were ready to force it to reveal answers. At the same time, something unusual was unfolding elsewhere. While Vanessa focused on drilling strategy, Gary Drayton and Jack Begley returned to the kidney-shaped stone area to continue scanning. No treasure had been found yet, but Gary had a strong feeling that the stones weren't marking random spots. Instead, they might be pointing towards something bigger. He began mentally connecting the locations, drawing invisible lines between the split boulder, the kidney-shaped stone, the carved X stone, and the square-marked stone. The layout felt too precise to be natural. It looked planned, engineered. Then came an unexpected discovery. A survey stake was found, driven deep into the ground between the second and third stones. Its design looked old, and its placement aligned perfectly with the geometry of the map. The team had seen similar stakes before, most notably in the swamp, where Fred Nolan had uncovered posts that carbon dated back to the 1500s. That detail changed everything. Now, the map didn't just represent an old theory, it connected to something that could be centuries older. But that raised even bigger questions. If these stakes really dated back to the 16th century, who put them there? And more importantly, what were they trying so carefully to hide? The team quickly shifted focus. Attention turned to the North Swamp, where unusual structures were beginning to emerge, stacked planks and layered platforms that looked far too organized to be natural formations. Historian Doug Crowell noticed something critical. The elevation of these layered swamp structures matched perfectly with a stone road discovered in earlier seasons. Could these wooden planks be part of the same system? A structured base designed to move something heavy, something valuable, across unstable ground. Dr. Ian Spooner was brought in to examine the site, and his reaction said it all. Quiet shock. The wood appeared extremely old. The way it had decayed suggested it had been placed deliberately, used for a purpose, and then abandoned, forgotten over time, but not erased. Spooner also noted that the structure extended much farther and deeper than expected. This wasn't just a small dock or simple platform, it was something much larger, almost industrial in scale. That word came up again. Industrial. As if Oak Island had once been an active work site, not for ordinary construction, but for hiding something significant. Meanwhile, on Lot 1, Vanessa's team began drilling. The ROC drill roared to life, cutting through layers of clay, sand, and sediment with precision. The first casing passed 100 feet, then 150. At around 200 feet, they hit resistance. First stone, then wood. Ancient wood. Vanessa immediately ordered core samples. The first sample came up dark and charred, burned timber buried deep underground. That raised an obvious question. Why would anything be burned nearly 200 feet below the surface? Rick examined it closely. The burn marks were clearly old, not recent. The wood fibers were fragile with age. To him, the conclusion was clear. They weren't just drilling through natural layers, they were cutting through something deliberately concealed. It looked like someone had burned materials either to hide something or to seal it away permanently. Vanessa ordered another core. More wood came up, this time showing clear signs of human work. The edges were rough, hand-cut, not machine-made. The atmosphere shifted immediately. Finding hand-cut beams at that depth suggested something constructed, possibly a tunnel or even a shaft. Historical accounts had long mentioned tunnels extending from the money pit, but no one had ever confirmed them. Until now. Another core was pulled. This time, the discovery changed everything. Embedded in the sample was something heavy. Not stone, not wood. Metal. It was corroded, with a greenish tint, fused into the wood as if it had been deliberately placed there. While the lab couldn't fully identify it yet, early tests revealed traces of gold. This wasn't just another artifact. It was the first real indication that something valuable might actually be buried below. And as the drilling continued, the discoveries only became more strange. Layer by layer, the shaft revealed deeper and older secrets, each one more unsettling than the last. The discovery of a metal fragment containing traces of gold stunned everyone. The mystery wasn't just what it was, but how it ended up embedded in burned wood hundreds of feet underground. The implications were unsettling, much like the shaft itself, and the surprises didn't stop there. The next core sample revealed something even more unexpected. Textile. It was a fragment of cloth, nearly reduced to dust, but clearly woven by human hands. The question was obvious. How could fabric survive under centuries of pressure, buried beneath layers of stone, soil, water, and decay? The answer seemed simple. It had been sealed, protected, and deliberately hidden. But that raised even bigger questions. How long had it been there? And who had placed it? Back in the war room, the team shifted into full analysis mode. They debated what the textile might have been. A piece of clothing, part of a sack, maybe even a flag. There was no clear answer, but one thing stood out. Its condition suggested it hadn't just been buried, it had been intentionally preserved. That realization shifted attention toward Lot 21, an area often overshadowed by the activity around the money pit and the swamp. But Lot 21 had its own history. It once belonged to the McGinnis family, the same family whose teenage son first discovered the money pit back in 1795. For the most part, the land had remained untouched for centuries. Using the Goodwin map and the alignment of the marker stones, Rick and Doug uncovered a key detail. The three boulders formed a precise triangle. Not a random shape, but the kind surveyors use when marking something important. They compared this with old elevation maps, and everything lined up. The center of that triangle pointed directly to a small wooded rise between lots 1 and 21, a spot that had never been drilled, tested, or disturbed. Until now. Gary Drayton and Jack Begley headed straight to the location. Gary began scanning slowly with his metal detector, listening carefully. At first, nothing. Just silence. Then, a sharp signal. They cleared away brush and carefully dug through damp leaves and tangled roots. What they uncovered was a ring. It was crushed and corroded, but clearly intentional in design. It resembled a signet ring, possibly dating back to the 1700s, or earlier. The engraving had faded, but its shape suggested importance, identity, authority, maybe even leadership. This wasn't just a lost object, it felt like a marker, or a clue. Once again, the team's momentum shifted. Vanessa ordered ground-penetrating radar to scan the center of the triangle. The results were striking: deep rectangular anomalies, hollow spaces surrounded by denser material. The kind of readings that often point to buried chambers or filled-in tunnels. Vanessa knew what had to come next. She instructed the ROC team to reposition a caisson for a controlled vertical test. Not a full excavation, just enough to confirm what lay beneath. That's when things took a dramatic turn. At 90 feet, they hit soft clay. At 130 feet, burned wood. Then, at 160 feet, the drill suddenly dropped into empty space. Not just a small pocket, but a real cavity. On Oak Island, underground voids are never random. They exist because someone created them. Vanessa immediately approved the use of a borehole camera. The footage was shaky as it descended into darkness, until it caught something. At around 170 feet, the camera revealed a flat, angular surface. Too precise to be natural, it looked like stone. Cut, stacked, and arranged. Possibly part of a constructed platform, or even a vault. The team fell silent. Rick stared at the screen, taking in the depth, the structure, the geometry. It all seemed to align with long-standing theories, especially the so-called Chapel Vault, a structure Frederick Blair once claimed existed deep beneath the original money pit. But this discovery raised new questions. This wasn't east of the money pit, where many expected such a structure. It was to the west, outside the usual search grid, exactly where the Goodwin map had been pointing all along. Back in the war room, the map was relabeled Goodwin-Blair Composite. No one knew what had happened to Blair's original drawings, but the drilling results were confirming something just as important. The data was starting to align, and whatever they had just discovered, it was only the beginning. Then came another find from a core sample, a small bead. It wasn't large or decorative, but it was perfectly shaped and polished. There was no chance it was natural. It had clearly been crafted by human hands. Whether it was made of gold, brass, or some unknown alloy, its presence, over 170 feet underground, inside what appeared to be a sealed chamber, was one of the strongest clues yet. No one said it directly, but the atmosphere in the room changed. Even Rick Lagina, known for his caution, admitted quietly that they had crossed into something new. This didn't seem connected to the money pit, the swamp, the stone road, or any of the earlier discoveries. This was different, untouched, undisturbed, and yet somehow connected to everything. Vanessa studied the live borehole feed as more of the chamber came into view. The interior showed curved walls, carefully arranged stone, and tightly fitted timbers. There were no signs of collapse, no erosion, nothing to suggest natural formation. This chamber had been built. The drill couldn't reveal the full structure, but it exposed enough to raise serious questions. Could this be a completely separate vault system? If so, why had it never been mapped before? Why was it located west of the known money pit area? And most importantly, was this the true target the Goodwin map had been pointing to all along? Vanessa made a decisive call. Expand the operation. They would move from narrow boreholes to full caisson drilling. It was a costly step, but with the equipment ready and conditions favorable, the opportunity was too important to pass up. 3 caissons were positioned, not in a straight line, but in a triangular formation, mirroring the pattern of the boulders from the Goodwin map. Each caisson was positioned to test a different corner of the mysterious area, each one a possible entry point into whatever lay hidden below. The first caisson reached dense sand at around 100 feet, then clay at 140 feet, followed by timber. But this wasn't random wood. It was ancient, layered, and interlocked, almost like part of a buried structure. The second caisson struck something different. Flat stone. It felt deliberate. And beneath it, there was empty space. Then came the third caisson, the real breakthrough. At about 178 feet, the ground suddenly opened up into a large chamber, deeper and wider than anyone had expected. As the drill broke through, the pressure shifted. Air rushed upward, stale, trapped air that hadn't been exposed for centuries. Vanessa's team reacted immediately. They lowered a second borehole camera, this one equipped with stronger lighting. Slowly, the chamber came into focus. It measured roughly 10 feet across and about 5 feet high, clearly defined, undeniably real, and right in the center was something no one could fully explain. It was rectangular, metallic, and partially covered in sediment, but far too uniform to be natural. It looked like a chest or a container of some kind. Whatever it was, it had been placed there deliberately. The chamber itself showed no signs of collapse. The walls were reinforced with cut timber and carefully arranged stone, all measured with precision. Whoever built it knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't a rough attempt or guesswork. It was planned, engineered construction. Then the camera picked up something else. Faint markings on the wall. Almost invisible at first, but when the light hit just right, the shape became clear. An X. The same symbol carved into the boulder found on the surface weeks earlier. Everything was starting to connect. Vanessa paused, taking it all in. Then she turned to Rick, Marty, Doug, and Gary, her voice calm but certain. They needed to stop drilling. It was time to excavate. A full-scale dig. It wouldn't be easy. It would require permits, engineers, and serious structural precautions. There were risks involved, but at this point, walking away didn't feel like an option anymore. Had Vanessa Lucido finally uncovered a hidden chapter of Oak Island that so many others had failed to find? What exactly was inside that chamber, and why had it been buried with such care, secrecy, and precision? Let us know what you think. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe to the TimeFold channel and leave a like.